Have you ever wondered where the best place to stay in Marrakech is? You've probably heard all about the vibrant Marrakech Medina, but today I'm going to share why we chose Gueliz instead. One of the reasons is because this is closer to the airport, and we initially considered staying in a riad in the Medina. I had asked the host about airport transfers, and the host quoted as $20 US one way. But instead of doing that, we did something else. When we arrived at the Marrakech airport, we got a taxi right outside the parking lot for 13 dirhams from the airport to our hotel in Gueliz, which was a lot cheaper. And Gueliz is only about 15 minutes from the Medina by taxi, so it's still not a bad commute. But Gueliz is closer to the airport, which makes it cheaper and more convenient when you need to catch your flight. We stayed across the street from the Marrakech train station in a really clean and budget-friendly hotel, and taxis passed by our street all the time, so it made it really easy to grab a taxi whenever we wanted to go somewhere. On our departure day, we just literally stepped outside the hotel and we got a taxi for 10 dirhams and it took us straight to the airport. Really nice guy. So we love it when things are convenient and cheap, especially when we need to catch a flight. So a second reason is about dust and pollution. The Medina is stunning, right? With its old buildings and rich character, but the dust and pollution were big factors for us. So if you have respiratory issues like allergies or asthma, this is something to keep in mind. Staying in Gueliz gave my lungs a break so that I could be ready to explore every single day. And as you can see here, the streets in Gueliz, they were bigger and they were cleaner. And honestly, the Medina wasn't that bad considering it's super old and historic, right? And I have seen a lot worse in my travels, but still we preferred a cleaner neighborhood and better air quality. So that's another reason why we chose Gueliz. I mentioned this briefly in another video, but we want to think about noise levels. So if you're into staying up all night, the Medina might be your scene. But if you love your sleep, Gueliz is a much quieter place to stay. There is still traffic, don't get me wrong, there is still traffic, but it's not as loud and crazy as the Medina. And every morning I woke up to the sound of birds. It was such a picturesque start to our mornings in Gueliz. So if you are a light sleeper, if you want a more cozy or relaxing stay, then Gueliz might be for you. If you're planning on venturing outside of Marrakech and taking a day trip, let me just paint a picture for you, okay? So imagine this, right? So you've been on the road since dawn, whether you were out by the coast in Isaira, maybe you took a hike in the Ozu waterfalls. After a long 12-hour day, it's nighttime and you're exhausted, right? Your feet ache and all you want is a comfortable bed. So as we approach the Medina in Marrakech, our bus drops off passengers at a central meeting point because guess what? The bus cannot navigate the tiny winding streets in the Medina, so that's where they're gonna drop them off. But for us, we got dropped off right at our hotel's front door in Gueliz. There was no navigating narrow streets, there was no extra walking with tired feet, but it was just a smooth, direct drop off, and it was just right in front of our hotel. So it's a small convenience, but honestly, after a long day of exploring, it's a huge relief. And this simple convenience made all the difference after a whole day of adventures. And it's another reason why we are so glad that we stayed in our hotel in Gueliz instead of the Medina. Now, if you plan to visit the Medina every day while you're in Marrakech, then staying there might be the best choice. But if you're exploring other parts of the city, or if you are taking day trips outside of Marrakech, just kind of think about how many days you're gonna actually spend in the Medina. If it's only like 1 or 2 days, then Gueliz might be better because taxis are cheap from there to the Medina, and it might be worth it for a more comfortable stay. And for me, Gueliz felt safer because it's a more upscale neighborhood, and I didn't attract as much unwanted attention as I did in the Medina, which is always a plus for me. And what I liked about Gueliz too is that it had a lot of trendy brunch spots, and it had a diverse selection of restaurants with international cuisine. So if you're curious about the food scene in Marrakech, I do have more coming up, so subscribe and stay tuned.